I'd like you all to meet Jackson, Clarissa said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. He's just a neighbor from the building. Laughter and string music still floated in the air, but in that instant, the room dropped into slow motion for me. I blinked once, twice. Excuse me. My voice was low, but the heat in it drew attention. Clarissa turned back to the group with a soft chuckle. You know how it is. Everyone knows everyone in the same building, right? My pulse kicked up. I stepped closer, my fingers tightening around the glass in my hand. Clarissa, what did you just say? She leaned in slightly, her smile now a warning. Don't do this here, Jackson. Oh, we're doing this here, I said, teeth clenched. Because this isn't a joke. You just erased 8 years of marriage like I was a stranger who borrowed sugar. People were looking now, soft gasps, eyes darting, murmurs blooming behind perfectly manicured hands. A man in a navy suit glanced awkwardly between us. A woman in a gold gown stared like she was watching a car crash in real time. Can we talk about this later? Clarissa whispered harshly. Don't embarrass yourself. I took a breath. Myself? I walked in here as your husband. You turned me into an afterthought in one sentence. She crossed her arms. You know how competitive things are at my job. You showing up uninvited. You invited me. My voice cracked out sharper than I meant. You literally begged me to come. Said it was important. Said your boss wanted to meet me. At that, a new voice entered. Cool, crisp, unbothered. I did, said Vanessa Grayson, stepping up like she'd been waiting for her cue. And I'm glad he came. Clarissa froze. Vanessa's presence could silence a boardroom. Tall, caramel-toned with eyes like ice and a reputation that could kill rumors before they started. She looked between the two of us with calm disapproval. Jackson, right? She asked, offering her hand. If you're free, take me. Let's go. Clarissa's entire expression shattered. Vanessa, wait, he's just upset. He doesn't understand. No. I cut in, eyes locked on Clarissa's. What I don't understand is how the woman who once cried when I made her French toast is now pretending we barely know each other so she can look. What? More independent? Less tied down? More available? Clarissa's mouth opened, but I didn't let her speak. I wore the tie you gave me, I said quietly, just loud enough for her to hear. The one from our second anniversary. Thought it might remind you of who you married. Her eyes flicked downward, and then away. Too late. I turned back to Vanessa, nodded, and placed my hand in hers. We walked out together. Every step away from that room felt like a detachment, not from Clarissa, but from the man I'd been clinging to. The man who gave benefit after benefit of the doubt, who covered for her when she came home late, who smiled through thinly veiled lies. That man didn't walk out with me. I did. And behind me, Clarissa stood among the marble and crystal, alone in a room full of people who suddenly saw her very, very differently. The cold slapped me gently as we stepped onto the balcony, 20-something stories above downtown Chicago. City lights shimmered in the glass below like 1,000 watchful eyes. I didn't say anything at first. Neither did she. Vanessa let go of my hand and leaned on the stone ledge, one arm folded under her chest, the other lighting a cigarette with practiced ease. The wind tugged at her coat as she inhaled, eyes scanning the skyline like she owned it. You okay? She asked finally. I didn't answer right away, just braced both hands on the railing and stared out at the glittering maze below. Define okay. Vanessa exhaled smoke sideways. Fair enough. A long pause stretched between us, the kind that feels more like a negotiation than a silence. Finally, I looked over at her. Why'd you step in back there? I don't like liars, she said simply. Clarissa lied to you. Vanessa turned toward me, the embers of her cigarette catching the light. Clarissa lies to everyone. The trick is, she's good at it, until she gets too comfortable. I studied her then, not just her words, but the tone. Vanessa wasn't dramatic. She wasn't out here for gossip. There was something under the surface. Oh wait, you said you wanted to meet me. Why? She gave me a half smile, the kind that didn't answer anything. I've heard a lot about you, and none of it matched the man I saw tonight. What exactly did you hear? That you were controlling, jealous, boring, stuck in the past. She met my eyes. But that's not what I saw. You were calm, precise. You let her unravel herself without even raising your voice. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's because I've had practice. Vanessa tapped her ash over the edge, her voice softer now. You know she's hiding something, right? My jaw tensed. You mean besides our marriage? No, I mean something serious. Something that isn't about you. That got my attention. I turned to face her fully. Then what is it? She studied me like she was weighing more than just my words. I can't say. Not yet. Why not? Because it's not my place, she said. Not tonight. My frustration flared. You pull me out of a ballroom full of strangers, hint at some grand truth, and now I'm supposed to wait around like a dog hoping for a bone. She didn't flinch. No, you're supposed to trust that not everything needs to be shouted across a rooftop. I hated that she made sense. I looked away, biting down on the rising storm in my chest. You've known her a long time? 3 years, Vanessa said. Long enough to see the cracks. Long enough to know she keeps her image airtight until someone pushes hard enough to break the seal. She's been off lately, I admitted. Colder. Smiles a lot more when people are watching. Laughs louder when I'm not part of the joke. Vanessa nodded, flicking the cigarette over the ledge. And now she's pretending you're not even real. That tells me she's protecting something. Or someone. I leaned on the rail again, my hands suddenly cold. You said it's not your place. But why are you even telling me this? She looked over at me, her gaze unreadable. Because you deserve to know. And because I'm tired of watching decent men get blindsided by pretty packaging. That silence came back again. But this time, it felt different, less like a pause, more like the start of something. Then she surprised me. Vanessa reached out, fingers brushing mine on the railing. Lightly, just once. Not suggestive. Not romantic. Just intentional. I'll be in touch, she said. When the time's right. Before I could ask anything else, she was already heading back inside, her heels tapping softly against the tile. And I was left out there alone, watching her disappear behind the glass. That moment stuck with me, because somewhere between her half-truths and that flicker of warmth in her eyes, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning. We didn't speak for a long time after the valet brought the car around. Clarissa slipped into the passenger seat like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just pretended I didn't exist in front of her colleagues, hadn't watched me leave with her boss, hadn't stood alone in the middle of a crowd as whispers bloomed around her like wildfire. I didn't rush. Let her sit in silence, in that tight little dress she'd picked out to impress people who didn't even know who she really was. I took my time adjusting the seat, checking the mirrors, pretending to care about things I didn't. Let the silence stretch. Only after we merged onto Lakeshore Drive did she finally speak. So that was childish, she said, staring straight ahead. I didn't respond. She turned to me, her voice sharper this time. Really, Jackson? Walking out with Vanessa? Was that supposed to prove something? My eyes stayed on the road. Didn't think I needed to prove anything. I was just the neighbor, remember? She scoffed. You're twisting this. No, I said, still calm. You did that all by yourself. The wind outside howled faintly through the cracks in the windows. I could feel her trying to build momentum, trying to climb back up the hill she'd just tumbled down. You humiliated me, she snapped. That did it. I turned my head, slowly, deliberately, met her eyes in the shadows of the car. Clarissa, I said, voice low and deliberate. You humiliated yourself. I just left the scene. She faltered, for just a second, but caught herself quickly. You didn't have to go with her. And you didn't have to erase me from your life to look impressive in front of people who'll forget your name the second they leave that ballroom. She looked out the window, her jaw clenched. Vanessa didn't take me, I added. You pushed me. That shut her up. The rest of the ride passed in brittle quiet, broken only by the hum of tires on wet asphalt and the occasional flick of her fingers nervously fidgeting with the hem of her dress. Every now and then, she'd glance at me, like she wanted to say something, apologize maybe, or explain. But she never did. And honestly, I didn't want her to. There's something about silence after betrayal. It stops being awkward, starts being honest. Words lose their weight when they've already been twisted. By the time we pulled into the garage under our building, her entire posture had changed. Less sharp, more defensive. She didn't wait for me to open her door, didn't make a dramatic exit or toss her hair like she usually would. She just got out, quietly, and walked ahead, her heels clicking fast across the pavement like she was trying to outrun her own shadow. I followed, slowly. Inside the elevator, we stood shoulder to shoulder, but felt miles apart. She crossed her arms. I kept mine loose by my sides. The only sound was the soft ding of each passing floor. When we reached ours, she stepped out first. But this time, she didn't turn around to wait. I watched her unlock the door, watched her pause for half a second like she expected me to say something. I didn't. She went inside. I stood there, just outside our door, for a few beats longer than I needed to. The hallway light buzzed faintly overhead. And all I could think was, this. This wasn't a marriage anymore. It was a game. And I'd finally learned the rules. The morning light poured into the kitchen like nothing had happened. Golden. Soft. Too honest. I walked in to find Clarissa standing at the stove. Hair in a perfect bun, silk robe tied like she was in a perfume commercial. Eggs sizzling in the pan. Avocado sliced on toast. Fresh coffee brewed. 2 mugs on the counter. But only 1 plate. She didn't look at me right away. Just flipped the eggs gently and adjusted the burner, like this was all part of a routine we never lost. Morning, she said, as if yesterday hadn't happened. As if she hadn't tried to delete me from her life for the sake of corporate optics. I didn't respond. Just pulled out a chair and sat at the table. The paper was there, folded neatly, like always. But the silence between us was a scream no one wanted to acknowledge. She set her own plate down. Saturday. Crossed her legs slowly. You didn't sleep much, she said after a moment, taking a dainty bite. I heard you pacing. I wasn't pacing. I replied without looking up. I was thinking. About what? I turned a page. Boundaries. She let out a soft, almost amused exhale. You're still upset. No, I said calmly. Upset implies emotion. I'm past that. She shifted in her seat, like my calm unnerved her more than shouting would have. I was under a lot of pressure last night, she tried. Vanessa's crowd is demanding. They don't care about husbands or domestic stories. You wouldn't understand. You're right. I cut in, finally looking at her. I don't understand. I don't understand how you can call someone just a neighbor after sharing a bed, a life, a mortgage. Her expression faltered, but only briefly. Then came the pivot. The softened tone, the lowered lashes. The oldest play in her book. You really hurt me, she said gently. With the way you left. With Vanessa. I tilted my head slightly. Hurt you? Yes, she said. You embarrassed me. I set the paper down. Let's get one thing straight. If you try to guilt me over a response to your disrespect, you'll lose. Quickly. Her eyes widened just a fraction. A reaction, subtle, but enough. She tried again, switching tactics. I was nervous, Jackson. I didn't mean to say it like that. I panicked. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. You had time to plan your speech. You picked the dress. You rehearsed your introductions. You knew exactly what you were doing. Her fork hovered midair, her smile fading. Clarissa, I said, my voice quieter now. If you're going to manipulate me, at least put some effort into it. A long, brittle silence filled the kitchen. Then I added, next time you pull a stunt like that, you can take your eggs and go live with your parents in St. Louis. Her lips parted slightly, like she hadn't expected that edge. Not from me. Not like this. And still, I didn't raise my voice. That's what threw her most. The calm was a weapon, one she had no armor for. She picked at her plate after that, suddenly less hungry. I returned to my paper, sipping the coffee she brewed for herself. The tension sat heavy between us, but I let it hang, let her stew in it. Because I was done explaining my worth to someone who'd rather edit me out of her story. Whatever game she was playing. She just learned I was no longer playing along. The jazz bar sat tucked away in a brick corner on Clark Street, half buried in ivy and old stories. The kind of place where the music wraps around you like a familiar coat, even if you've never been there before. No one took pictures here. No one raised their voice. It was a temple of low light and long shadows. And tonight, it was exactly where I needed to be. Damien was already there, leaning against the high table near the back, nursing his second scotch. Same charcoal blazer, same watch he'd worn since law school. Scratched, loyal, a relic of steadier years. You look like hell, he said by way of greeting. I pulled out the stool and Saturday feel like it. The band in the corner slid into a slow, smoky rhythm. Saxophone bleeding into piano, every note just slightly behind the beat, like the music, too, was tired of pretending. I didn't speak for a while. Neither did he. That's the thing with old friends. They let you arrive slowly. Finally, Damien broke the silence. So, want to tell me why you stormed out of a corporate gala with your wife's boss on your arm? I let out a humorless breath. Because my wife introduced me as her neighbor. His brow lifted halfway to his hairline. That's new. She said it with a straight face. I muttered. Didn't flinch. Then turned back to her group like I was the building janitor who wandered in. Damien whistled low. That's cold. She panicked, apparently. That was her excuse. He took another sip. And Vanessa? Vanessa saw it all. Stepped in. Told me to take her hand. So I did. Damien blinked. You just left? With Clarissa's boss? She gave me a way out, I said. I took it. A pause. Then he nodded, slow. Can't say I blame you. The music swelled a bit in the background, drums brushing softly, like cautious footsteps. I stared into my drink. I don't know, man. The last few days feel surreal. Like I've been living in a snow globe someone finally decided to shake. Damien leaned in, resting his elbows on the table. What scares you most? That she did it. Or that you're not surprised anymore? That one landed. I didn't answer. Because the truth? I wasn't surprised. Not really. Clarissa had been slipping for months, smiling less, asking less, drifting more. The warmth we used to share had grown so quiet I'd started to mistake it for peace. But it wasn't peace. It was erosion. And now I was standing at the bottom of a cliff I hadn't even realized was crumbling. She's been calm, I said finally. Weirdly calm. Like she's trying to reset everything with breakfast and small talk. She's buying time, Damien said. People only go that quiet when they're either plotting or breaking. I looked over at him. And which one do you think she is? He shrugged. Depends. What does she have to lose? The question hung there, unanswered. Because deep down, I knew the answer. Or I was starting to. She wasn't trying to fix things. She was hiding something. And the scariest part? I wasn't sure I cared enough anymore to want her to explain. Damien tapped the side of his glass. You're at the fracture, my friend. The part where things either heal or split. And what comes after that? He smiled faintly. Something real. If you're lucky. The piano slowed, the sax trailing off like a sigh. Around us, the bar buzzed quietly, strangers sipping their own versions of heartbreak. And I sat there, letting the music carry the weight I wasn't ready to name yet. For 3 weeks, it was like nothing had happened. Clarissa became pleasant. Not warm, never warm, but methodically agreeable. She cooked dinner every night, nothing fancy, just competent meals with no comments about calories or ingredients. She smiled when I came home, folded laundry with precision, laughed at my dry jokes like she was auditioning for a part she used to own. At first, I didn't trust it. But people can only perform for so long, right? Soon, the sharpness in my chest began to dull. The silence stopped feeling hostile. Even our routines, shared coffee, late-night news, the occasional brush of hands while passing each other, began to mimic the old days. Sometimes I caught myself thinking maybe this was her way of apologizing. Maybe her mask had cracked, and this was her trying to piece it all back together, carefully, like gluing porcelain. Maybe that night at the gala was just a symptom of a bigger breakdown. Or maybe I was just tired of holding my guard up. Either way, I started to settle. Until the message came. I was in the middle of sorting out quarterly spreadsheets at my home office desk. Nothing thrilling, just pure numbers, clean columns, the kind of logic that never lied. My phone buzzed once. I almost ignored it. Unknown number. Northside Grounds Cafe. 2 p.m. Come alone. At first, I figured it was spam. But something in me twisted when I reread the name. Northside Grounds. It was small. Old school. No Wi-Fi, no digital receipts. Vanessa had mentioned it once, barely a whisper between conversations, when I'd asked where she escaped to when her phone wouldn't stop ringing. There's a place on the north side, she said. You can disappear there. I hadn't thought about it again. Until now. I stared at the message, the screen's light flickering slightly in my hand. No signature. No context. But the tightness in my chest told me exactly who it was from. I didn't respond. Just set the phone down and leaned back in my chair, staring at the wall like it might offer some clarity. It didn't. Clarissa had been calm. Consistent. She hadn't picked a fight in weeks. No passive jabs. No cold dismissals. But now it all felt like setup. Like peace was just a blanket thrown over a fire. She knew something was coming. Maybe even expected it. And now, so did I. I heard her humming faintly in the kitchen, some generic tune, tuneless and sweet. She was making pasta. I could smell the garlic, the olive oil, the heat of it. It was domestic. Familiar. So safe it almost made me dizzy. And still, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything, every meal, every careful smile, was just her trying to stay ahead of a truth she could no longer outrun. I didn't tell her about the message. Didn't ask who it could be. I just excused myself early the next day, told her I had errands to run downtown. She didn't ask questions. She just kissed my cheek and told me to drive safe. Like none of it mattered. But as I drove through the quiet neighborhoods toward the north side, every passing block felt heavier. Like I was being pulled, not by choice, but by gravity. And the closer I got to that cafe, the more I realized this wasn't over. It hadn't even begun. North Side grounds didn't look like much from the outside. A flickering neon, open, sign hung in the corner window, half burned out. The brick was weather-worn. The paint on the door faded to a stubborn gray. It was the kind of place you'd pass without noticing. Which, I guess, was the point. Inside, it smelled like strong coffee and aged wood. There was no music, just the soft clink of mugs and quiet conversation tucked into corners. It took a second for my eyes to adjust, but when they did, I saw her. Booth 9. Back of the room. Eyes already on me. Vanessa. She didn't wave. Just lifted her chin slightly, the way a person does when the time for polite greetings has passed. I slid into the seat across from her. No menu. No pretense. Just a man trying not to flinch before the blow. She placed a folder on the table between us. Plain. Manila. No label. I told you I'd reach out when it was time, she said. It's time. I stared at it for a second, then at her. What's in there? She pushed it forward with 2 fingers. Everything you need to know. I opened it slowly. At first, it was just a page of employee records. Then photos. A company ID with my name, but not my face. A hiring document signed by Clarissa. A forged signature where mine should have been. Then a termination notice. Dated 3 weeks ago. My chest tightened. She hired someone, Vanessa said quietly, using your name. Claimed you were consulting. Pulled strings to fast-track his clearance. I stared at the photo stapled to the top right corner of the first sheet. It wasn't me. It was a younger guy, smirking, confident, wearing a badge with my name on it. He never showed up, she continued. Not once. HR flagged it. I looked into it myself. And that's when everything unraveled. Why? I asked, my throat dry. Why would she do this? Vanessa tilted her head, her expression unreadable. To protect herself. To buy time. To cover a lie with another one. I don't know what she told him, or you, but I know she was fired 3 weeks ago. She just never told you. The word fired hit like a slap. She's been pretending to go to work? I asked. Vanessa nodded slowly. Every day. The room spun. I looked back down at the papers. Evidence of a life I hadn't known I was living in. The man with my name. The job I never had. The signature I never wrote. And Clarissa at the center of all of it. I wanted to tell you earlier, Vanessa said. But I couldn't risk it getting out prematurely. HR's involved now. Legal too. She covered her tracks, but not well enough. My hands were shaking. She said I embarrassed her. I muttered. All this time, she was hiding, Vanessa finished. She's been building a house of cards. And it's collapsing fast. I didn't know what to say. What do you say when the floor you've been standing on suddenly drops? Vanessa leaned in, her voice softer now. I didn't bring you here to hurt you, Jackson. I brought you here so you'd stop doubting yourself. I looked up at her. For the first time in weeks, something shifted in me. Not rage. Not sadness. Clarity. I need to find him, I said. Who? The guy she hired. The one with my name. Vanessa watched me carefully, then nodded. And just like that, the next step became obvious. Clarissa's secrets weren't done speaking. But neither was I. The next morning, Clarissa kissed me goodbye with practiced ease. Soft. Brief. Just enough to keep the mask in place. I've got back-to-back meetings, she said over her shoulder, slipping into her usual navy coat. Might be late. I smiled faintly. Don't wait up, I replied. She paused, just for a second, then nodded. See you tonight. The door clicked shut behind her. 2 minutes later, I grabbed my keys and followed. She had no idea I'd cleared my schedule. No idea Vanessa had handed me the missing piece I needed, an address tied to the man in the photos. A quiet street in one of those forgettable neighborhoods just outside the city. Neutral siding. Well-trimmed lawns. The kind of place where secrets go to blend in. Clarissa's car weaved through traffic like she had a purpose. And she did, just not the one she'd sold me over breakfast. I kept back, far enough not to draw suspicion. Her route was too smooth, too natural. No detours. No hesitation. She wasn't nervous. She'd done this before. 15 minutes passed. Then 20. And finally, she turned into a residential cul-de-sac I didn't recognize. She parked beside a modest one-story house with faded shutters and a sagging porch swing. Nothing stood out. No markers, no drama. Just another dot on the map. Until the door opened. My stomach dropped. It was him. The man from the HR file. The one who had worn my name like a mask. He looked even younger in person. Relaxed. Familiar with her. His hand casually brushed her lower back as she stepped inside without knocking. That touch, brief, instinctive, told me everything. I didn't hesitate. Parked the car halfway down the block, stepped out, and walked with purpose. My shoes crunched softly on gravel as I crossed the lawn. No plan. Just truth. I didn't knock. I shoved the door open. The cheap lock gave with barely any resistance. Inside, the scent of burnt toast and cologne hit me at once. The man turned in surprise, coffee mug in hand, his face draining of color the moment he saw mine. Clarissa's scream echoed from the hallway. "Jackson, what the hell are you?" I was already across the room, grabbing the guy by the collar and slamming him against the wall. "Who the hell are you?" I hissed, my fingers locked tight in his shirt. "You work for me now? You wear my name, lie to my face, sleep with my—" "Stop!" Clarissa shrieked, trying to pull me back. "You're hurting him." The man stammered, panicked. I didn't know it would go this far. She said you weren't around anymore, that you didn't care." I tightened my grip. "You don't get to explain me to me." He winced. "It wasn't supposed to be like this." Clarissa was crying now, real tears streaking down her foundation. "I didn't plan this, Jackson. I didn't." He helped me. He understood. "You forged my name." I growled, still holding the guy in place. "You dragged me into a lie so big it could bury us both." She shook her head. "You don't know what it was like, trying to keep up appearances, pretending everything was fine. Vanessa was pressuring me. I couldn't breathe." "No," I said coldly, letting go of him. He slumped to the floor like a rag doll, gasping. "I gave you everything," I said, "and you gave me a circus." Clarissa collapsed onto the couch, covering her face with trembling hands. I was scared. I thought I'd lose everything. "You already have," I whispered. The room was heavy, broken, exposed, and for the first time, I didn't feel rage. Just exhaustion. Whatever this had been, it was over. The only thing left now was consequence. The door wasn't locked. It clicked open beneath my hand like it had been waiting for me. I stepped inside and didn't bother calling out. The place was too quiet, too lived in. One look at the scattered shoes, the half-drunk coffee on the counter, the blanket folded too neatly on the couch, and I knew. She'd made herself at home. Clarissa's voice came first. Light, unbothered. "Did you forget something at?" Then she saw me. The color drained from her face. I didn't say a word. Not yet. A man appeared behind her. Tall, maybe early 30s, hair damp like he'd just showered. He stopped mid-step when he saw me. His smile dropped. I knew that face. I'd seen it in the folder Vanessa gave me. The man who wore my name. My breath caught, but not from surprise. From rage, so sharp it felt surgical. Clarissa tried to speak. "Jackson, this isn't. Just give me a second to." I moved without thinking. Crossed the room in 4 fast strides, grabbed the man by the collar, and slammed him against the nearest wall. A picture frame crashed to the ground. Clarissa screamed behind me, but I didn't care. "Say my name," I growled. He stammered, terrified. "WH what?" "You wore it," I hissed, tightening my grip. "On company forms. On ID. In her mouth." "Say it." "Jackson. His name is Jeremy." Clarissa cried, pulling at my arm. "He didn't do anything to you. He became me." I roared, not even looking at her. "You gave him my life. You let him sign it, sleep in it, lie through it. And you still expect me to listen?" Jeremy's face was going pale. I didn't know how deep it went, man. I swear. She said it was a temporary thing, a workaround, she said. I turned and stared directly at Clarissa, still holding him pinned. What else did she say? That I was controlling? Boring? That you were rescuing her? "Stop it," she sobbed. "This isn't you. No." I snapped, my voice low, shaking. "It's not. But apparently you don't know who I am anymore. So let me remind you." I threw Jeremy forward. He stumbled and crashed into the coffee table, knocking over a half-full mug that soaked into the rug. Clarissa dropped to her knees beside him, shielding him like I was the threat. I trusted you, I said, each word like a stone. You told me we were struggling. I believed you. I thought we were trying. We were. I was scared. Vanessa was pressuring me. Things were falling apart. I panicked. So you replaced me? I said, voice hoarse now. That was the answer? Jeremy coughed. She said you checked out. That you didn't even care anymore. I stared at him. Cold. Hollow. And that gave you permission? He looked away. Of course he did. Clarissa reached for me. Her hand brushed mine, and I pulled back like she burned. I came here to hear the truth, I said. But I already knew it. You were never scared. You were calculating. Her face crumpled. Please, don't do this. We can fix it. No, I said. Simple. Final. You ended this the moment you forged my name and handed it to someone else like it was a coat to borrow. She collapsed back, silent, broken. I looked around one last time. The couch. The jacket slung over the chair. The smell of two lives pretending to be one. Then I walked out without another word. Not because I didn't have more to say, but because nothing I said could compete with what they'd already done. There's a kind of silence that comes after everything breaks. A silence so complete it doesn't feel peaceful. It feels hollow, like the world is catching its breath. That's where I lived, those next few weeks. In silence. And watching. The fallout didn't come like thunder. It came in layers. First, a phone call from Vanessa. It's begun, she said. Clarissa's name was scrubbed from the company directory within 48 hours. Her email access revoked. HR moved fast once they got the evidence. Employee fraud, falsified identity, breach of contract. The documents Vanessa handed over had been airtight. Clarissa never fought it. I don't know if it was guilt or exhaustion. Maybe both. Maybe neither. But she didn't show up to defend herself. Didn't answer when the board asked for clarification. She just disappeared. Her lover, Jeremy, lasted even less. Vanessa said he vanished the moment the legal department flagged the falsified badge. Poof. Just like that. Like he never existed. He'd always been good at pretending. Within a week, it was all over. No job. No severance. No reputation. Clarissa left the city quietly. I didn't even see her pack. One night she was there, moving around our apartment like a ghost, and the next morning, she was gone. She left a note on the kitchen counter. Going back to Missouri. Don't contact me. That was it. No apology. No confession. No closure. Just Missouri. Her father's old dairy farm. The place she used to mention with a wrinkle in her nose and a sip of wine. Cows. Mud. Manual labor. A world she'd spent her entire adult life trying to outgrow. Now it was all she had left. I heard from Vanessa again 2 days later. We met for coffee, neutral ground. She looked tired but relieved. Her case is closed, she told me. They won't pursue further action if she stays quiet. And Jeremy? Gone, she said. Probably halfway across the country by now. But don't worry, we made sure his paper trail ends here. I nodded, took a sip of my coffee. Are you okay? She asked. It took me a second to answer. I don't know, I said. But I'm not broken. That was the truth. I wasn't whole, but I was no longer crumbling either. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was the pretending. The slow erosion of trust. The smile she wore when she lied. The calm voice. The fake routines. That's what dug deepest. The theater of it all. And now? Now the curtain was down. I spent my evenings alone mostly. Reading. Walking. Listening to music with no lyrics. I removed the framed photos from the hallway wall one at a time. Packed up her scarves. Washed the scent of her perfume from the bedroom sheets. It was strange how quiet heartbreak could be when no one was left to lie about it. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clean. Like stepping out of a storm and realizing your house is still standing, but you'll never look at it the same way again. We met again in a small, dim-lit cafe tucked beneath the L tracks, the kind of place where time slowed and no one asked questions. Vanessa was already there when I arrived, sipping a black coffee, eyes watching the steam swirl like she was listening to it talk. She looked up as I slid into the seat across from her. A half-smile tugged at her mouth. You're late, she said. You're early. She shrugged. I don't like surprises. I let out a short breath. That makes two of us. There was silence for a while, not uncomfortable, just honest. Then she leaned forward. Heard about the fallout. She really went back to Missouri? I nodded. Her dad's farm. The one with the cows she never mentioned without rolling her eyes. Vanessa laughed softly. Fitting. I traced the rim of my coffee mug with my thumb. Funny how people run straight to the thing they used to run from. Maybe she was never running from it, Vanessa said. Just didn't know it was her fallback until she had nowhere else to land. I looked at her then. Really looked. Strong, sharp lines beneath tired eyes. The kind of woman who had learned to carry weight without shifting her spine. Who'd seen everything fall apart before and still knew how to pour coffee like it mattered. You knew, I said finally. Back at the gala. You already knew everything. Vanessa didn't answer right away. Then, slowly, I suspected. I had enough to warn you, but not enough to act. If I came too early, she would have spun it. Made you look like the unstable one. I swallowed. Why didn't you just tell me anyway? She looked at me carefully. Because people in love don't believe facts. They believe patterns. And yours were still forming. I nodded slowly, feeling those words settle. She reached across the table, laid her hand over mine. Light. Steady. But now, she said gently, maybe you're ready for something else. I didn't pull away. I didn't promise anything, either. I just sat there, her hand on mine, the train rumbling above us, and the weight of everything finally lifting. Not all at once, but enough to breathe. Maybe closure doesn't always come with a door slamming. Sometimes, it's just someone looking at you without needing anything. Maybe it's enough to not be alone in the aftermath. And maybe, just maybe, it's the start of something honest. Something real. Something new.